morning at St. Mary's Elementary, Boston. Third-grade teacher Sarah Mitchell felt her blood freeze as little Emma whispered 4 words. "He's taking my brother tonight." The 8-year-old's trembling hands clutched a crumpled note, tears streaming down her face. 20 years of teaching hadn't prepared Sarah for what was written inside, but what the school security cameras caught next would shock the entire city. The man in the maintenance uniform wasn't there to fix the heaters. His work badge matched the one found at 3 other schools where children had vanished. This wasn't just about a scared little girl's warning. This was about a teacher uncovering a pattern that police had missed for months, and how a child's desperate courage would expose a trafficking ring operating through America's most trusted schools. But before we jump back into the video, let us know where you're watching from. And if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe, because I have something really special for you tomorrow. And now, back to the video. Sarah's hands trembled as she smoothed out the crumpled paper. Emma's normally neat handwriting was shaky, desperate. "Dear Ms. Mitchell, Tommy showed me the pictures. The man who fixes things told him about a special school for smart kids. He's coming to our house tonight. Tommy's scared, but he says he has to go or they'll hurt me. Please, help. I don't want my brother to disappear like Michael from 4th grade." The classroom clock ticked loudly in the silence. Through the window, Sarah could see children playing at recess, their laughter a sharp contrast to the horror unfolding in her classroom. Emma stood before her desk, small shoulders shaking with silent sobs, her pink backpack clutched like a shield. "When did Tommy show you these pictures, sweetheart?" Sarah kept her voice steady, years of teaching experience helping her maintain a calm she didn't feel. The girl's next words made her stomach drop. "Yesterday, after the maintenance, man talked to him in the library. Tommy said he's special, that they only pick special kids." Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. "Like Michael, before he went away." Sarah's mind raced. Michael Thompson's disappearance 3 months ago had been ruled a runaway case. The 12-year-old had vanished between school and home, leaving behind devastated parents and a community full of questions. But now, she glanced at her classroom door, where the new maintenance man had been working just hours ago. Something about him had seemed off. The way he lingered near the children, how his eyes followed certain students. She'd dismissed her unease, telling herself she was being paranoid after Michael's disappearance. The security camera feed on her classroom computer caught her eye. The maintenance man was in the hallway again, talking to a young boy outside the library. Sarah's heart stopped. The boy was Tommy, Emma's 11-year-old brother. Without taking her eyes off the screen, Sarah reached for her phone. But before she could dial, she saw something that made her blood run cold. The man's ID badge caught the light as he leaned down to show Tommy something on his phone. The logo wasn't the school district's. It matched a photo from the news, one shown in connection with 2 other missing children cases in neighboring districts. "Emma, honey, I need you to stay right here with me," Sarah said, her teacher's instincts kicking in as she pressed the classroom's emergency button, a silent alarm that would bring the principal and security without alerting the entire school. "We're going to help Tommy, but I need you to be very brave for a few more minutes." As they waited, Sarah watched the security feed with growing horror. The maintenance man was smooth, professional. No one passing by would see anything but a friendly worker chatting with a student. But Sarah saw how Tommy's shoulders hunched, how his hands fidgeted with his jacket zipper. The same nervous tells she'd noticed in Michael before he disappeared. The principal's footsteps in the hallway had never been more welcome. But as Sarah looked down at Emma's tear-stained face, she knew this was just the beginning. The note in her hands wasn't just a cry for help. It was evidence of something far darker happening in America's schools. And somehow, this 8-year-old girl had found the courage to expose it all. Principal Margaret Chen's face turned ashen as she read Emma's note. Outside her office, 2 police officers were already reviewing the security footage, while Emma sat with the school counselor, her small frame dwarfed by an oversized chair. Sarah couldn't stop watching the clock. Every minute brought Tommy closer to whatever fate had claimed Michael Thompson and the others. "The badge in the footage," Officer Rivera said, rewinding the video for the 3rd time. "It's got the same markings as the ones from the Cambridge and Worcester cases." She turned to Sarah, her expression grim. "You said he's been here how long?" 2 weeks, Sarah replied, her mind racing through every interaction she'd witnessed. right after the winter maintenance review. He said he was from the district's new contractor, showed all the right paperwork. She paused, a horrible thought striking her. The review that recommended replacing half our regular maintenance staff. Principal Chen's head snapped up. The same review that happened at Cambridge Middle School, right before Marcus. Chen disappeared, Officer Rivera finished. No relation to you, I assume? No. Chen's voice was tight. But I remember the case. 13-year-old boy, stellar student, vanished between piano lessons and home. She turned to her computer, fingers flying across the keyboard. Sarah, look at this. The maintenance contracts. All 4 schools use the same company, Elite Educational Services. Sarah leaned in, scanning the documents. The company looked legitimate at first glance. Professional website, glowing testimonials, all the right certifications. But something caught her eye. The testimonials, they're all from the same 6-month period. And the company was registered. Just last year, Officer Rivera was already on her radio. Dispatch, we need background on Elite Educational Services. Registration number EC547891. And get me everything on their employees, especially maintenance workers. She turned back to the screen, studying the man's face. He's good. Knows exactly where the cameras are, keeps his head angled just right. This isn't his first time. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from Tommy's mother. Her heart sank as she read. She said, Tommy says he's staying late for math club. Is that running today? There is no math club today, Principal Chen said, reading over Sarah's shoulder. All after-school activities were cancelled for teacher training. She pressed the intercom button. Security, locate Tommy Parker immediately. Check the library. First. The next 5 minutes were eternal. Sarah watched the security feeds as guards searched the building, her dread growing with each empty room. Emma's words echoed in her mind. He's taking my brother tonight, Ms. Mitchell. Emma's voice was small but steady from the doorway. The counselor stood behind her, concern etched on her face. I've remembered something else. The pictures Tommy showed me. There was a building, like a big house with a gate. He said that's where the special school is. Officer Rivera knelt before Emma, her voice gentle but urgent. Can you remember anything about the building? Any signs or special marks? Emma closed, her eyes concentrating. It was red brick with white columns and there was a statue, a lion, I think. Tommy said it looked like Aslan from Narnia. Sarah's blood ran cold. She knew that building. The old Prescott Academy, she breathed. It closed down 3 years ago. It's out on Beacon Street, right across from where Marcus Chen was last seen. Officer Rivera finished, already moving. Principal Chen, we need to lock down the school. Nobody in or out until we clear every room. And get me everything you have on this maintenance man, real name or not. As if on cue, Sarah's phone lit up with an email. Surveillance photos from the district's security office showing the maintenance man entering 3 different schools over the past month. But it was the last photo that stopped her heart. A shot of him loading equipment into a van, its side bearing the Elite Educational Services logo. In the background, barely visible through the van's window, was a stack of student files. The winter review, Sarah realized, horror dawning. They didn't just replace the maintenance staff, they had access to every student's records. Medical, histories, family situations, schedules. She looked at Principal Chen. They were shopping, looking for specific kids. Officer Rivera was already calling for backup, her voice tight with urgency. They're not just grabbing random targets. This is organized, professional. They're selecting children who match certain criteria. A young officer burst into the office, face flushed. Ma'am, we found this in the maintenance office. He held up a tablet, its screen displaying a carefully organized database. It's got profiles on dozens of kids, all from different schools in the region. And look at the categories. They're sorted by. Sarah felt sick as she read the classifications. Gifted program, limited family connections, recent family trauma, financial hardship. They weren't just looking for any vulnerable children. They were cataloging them, assessing them like products. There's more, the officer continued, scrolling through the tablet. Each profile has a status. Most say monitoring or potential, but some are marked priority, including Tommy Parker. Emma, who had been quiet until now, suddenly spoke up. The man told Tommy he was special because he's good with computers. He said the new school has the best technology program in the country. Her voice dropped to a whisper, just like he told Michael before. The pieces were falling into place with horrifying clarity. This wasn't a random predator. This was a sophisticated operation targeting gifted children, using their own talents and dreams as bait, and they had been operating in plain sight, hiding behind legitimate contracts and paperwork. Principal Chen was already pulling up Tommy's file. Single mother, working 2 jobs, father passed away last year, straight-A student with exceptional or computer aptitude scores. She looked at Officer Rivera. They picked him because he's vulnerable and gifted, just like Marcus Chen, just like Michael Thompson. And they're taking him tonight, Sarah added, her teacher's protective instincts roaring to life. She turned to Officer Rivera. How long until your backup arrives? 10 minutes to full tactical response. But if they're watching the school... Sarah finished the thought. They might move up their timeline. She looked at Emma, seeing not just fear in those young eyes, but determination. Honey, we need to know everything Tommy told you about tonight. Every single detail, no matter how small. As Emma began to speak, Sarah's mind was already racing through possibilities. Somewhere in this 8-year-old's memory might be the key to stopping whatever had been haunting their schools. The clock kept ticking, each moment bringing Tommy closer to joining the growing list of missing children. But this time, they had something they didn't have before: advance warning, and a brave little girl who refused to let her brother disappear. Detective James Reeves had seen a lot in his 15 years with Boston PD's Missing Persons Unit, but the evidence spread across Principal Chen's desk made his skin crawl. Student files, maintenance contracts, security footage, all pointing to something far bigger than their usual cases. Officer Rivera was briefing him while Sarah kept one eye on the clock and another on Emma, who hadn't left her side since revealing the truth about Tommy. The facial recognition just came back, Reeves announced, his tablet displaying a series of matches. Our maintenance man has used at least 5 different identities in 3 states. Real name, Robert Crane. Former IT specialist with the defense. Contractor, disappeared after an investigation into unauthorized access of personnel files. He looked up grimly. He didn't just disappear, he erased himself. Every digital record, every trace, until now. Sarah studied the photos, each showing the same man in different disguises. School maintenance worker, IT consultant, educational, supplies deliveryman, all positions that gave him access to children without raising suspicion. He's been hiding in plain sight, she realized, using the school's own systems against them. It's worse than that, Principal Chen said, hanging up her phone. I just spoke with the superintendent. Elite Educational Services didn't just get contracts here. They're in school districts across New England, always following the same pattern. Security reviews, staff replacements, then children start disappearing. Emma, who had been quietly drawing at a nearby table, suddenly spoke up. Tommy said the man showed him pictures of other kids too, in the special school. They all had computers and robots and stuff. She paused, her crayon hovering over the paper. He said they looked happy, but their eyes were wrong. Detective Reeves knelt beside Emma, his voice gentle. Can you show me what you're drawing, sweetheart? Emma turned her paper around. She had drawn a building, the old Prescott Academy, but with details they hadn't noticed in the photos. Security cameras on every corner, black vans in the parking lot, and something else, a symbol on the gate, partially hidden by ivy. I've seen that before, Officer Rivera said, zooming in on her tablet. It was on some of the equipment in the maintenance office. Looked like a corporate logo, but... She pulled up another image, this one from a seized laptop. The same symbol appeared in the corner of what looked like a software interface. Sarah's phone buzzed again, another text from Tommy's mother. He's not answering his phone. Getting worried? Should I come to the school? Detective Reeves made a quick decision. We need to keep her away. If they're watching Tommy's house, seeing his mother leave might spook them. He turned to Sarah. Can you stall her? Tell her he's in a study session or something? Before Sarah could respond, Emma gasped. The pictures! Tommy has them on his phone. He showed me yesterday. If we could see his phone. Which he's not answering, Sarah finished, frustration mounting. Then, she remembered something. Wait, last month after the cybersecurity assembly, I helped several students set up tracking apps on their phones. Tommy was one of them. Principal Chen was already accessing the school's technology portal. If he's logged into the school's Wi-Fi network, we might be able to... She stopped, staring at the screen. He's not in the building. According to this, his phone is... It's moving. Heading east on Beacon Street. Toward Prescott Academy. Officer Rivera confirmed, already radioing. For backup. But school's not out for another 2 hours. How did they get him out without anyone seeing? The answer came from an unexpected source. The school janitor, Mr. Peterson, burst into the office. The tunnels, he said, breathing hard. The old maintenance tunnels. I just found the access door open in the boiler room. It connects to the city's old steam system, runs right under Beacon Street. Detective Reeves was already moving. Rivera, get tactical units to Prescott Academy. Quiet approach, no sirens. Chen, I need blueprints of those tunnels. And someone get me eyes on that building. If they're moving kids through there... Wait, Sarah interrupted, pointing to Emma's drawing. Look at the vans she drew, black vans, just like the ones from the security footage. But these have something written on them. She turned to Emma. Honey, did Tommy tell you what those vans were for? Emma nodded slowly. He said they're special. Buses. For taking kids to competitions and stuff. The man told him they're going to a robotics competition tonight. That's why he has to go after school. The pieces clicked together with horrifying speed. Sarah grabbed the tablet, pulling up Elite Educational Services website. There it was, buried in their services list. Student Transportation Solutions. She clicked through to their fleet information. They're not just using the schools to find targets. They're using official transportation contracts to move them across state lines. Making them disappear in plain sight, Reeves growled. No one questions a bus full of kids headed to an academic competition. He turned to his radio. I need roadblocks on every major route out of Boston. Look for black passenger vans, Elite, Educational Services logos, and get me surveillance on every school where they have contracts. This isn't a single operation. It's a pipeline. Principal Chen's computer chimed. An alert from the school's security system. The maintenance office. Someone's accessing it remotely, trying to delete files. Her fingers flew over the keyboard. They know we're onto them. Sarah watched the clock with growing dread. 2 hours until normal dismissal. Would they wait that long now that their cover was blown? Her mind raced through everything they'd learned. The careful selection of targets. The sophisticated use of school systems. The network of transportation and safe houses disguised as educational facilities. The competitions, she said suddenly. Emma, did Tommy say what kind of robotics competition it was? Emma shook her head. Just that it was special, only for really smart kids, and... Her voice trembled. And that once they go, they win so many prizes, they never want to come home. Detective Reeves was already making calls, his voice tight with urgency. Check every academic competition registered in New England for the next week. Robotics, computing, anything technical. Cross-reference with Elite's transportation records. He looked at Sarah. They're not just trafficking these kids. They're targeting the gifted ones specifically. The question is, why? The answer began to emerge as Officer Rivera's tablet filled with new information. Bank records, shell companies, offshore accounts, all connected to Elite Educational Services. But it was a news article from 2 years ago that made Sarah's blood run cold. Tech giant faces criticism over use of underage programmers in Southeast Asia. They're not just taking them, she whispered. They're harvesting them, using their talents, their gifts. She couldn't finish the thought. Emma tugged at her sleeve. Ms. Mitchell, Tommy said something else, about the special school. She swallowed hard. He said once kids go there, they get to work on secret projects. Important stuff that regular schools aren't allowed to teach. The implications were staggering. A network of false schools, using gifted children for who knew what kind of work, all hidden behind legitimate contracts and everyday school operations. And now they had Tommy, with 2 hours until someone would notice he was officially missing. Detective Reeves gathered his team, his expression grim but determined. We've got a location, we've got their method, and thanks to Emma, we've got advance. Warning. Now we just need to move fast enough to shut down not just this operation, but every connected site in New England. Sarah looked at Emma, seeing the fear and hope warring in her young eyes. We're going to get him back, she promised. And we're going to make sure these people can never take another child. She turned to the detective. What do you need me to do? Reeves considered for a moment. You know these kids, their patterns, their school lives. I need you to help us think like them. Help us understand what these bastards are using to lure them in. Because somewhere in all this, there's a key to finding not just Tommy, but every child they've taken. As the room erupted into coordinated activity, Sarah felt a fierce determination rise within her. 20 years of teaching had taught her to protect her students at all costs. Now that protection would extend far beyond her classroom walls. The clock was ticking, but for the first time since Michael disappeared, they had a chance to stop these predators before they could destroy more young lives. The command center in Principal Chen's office had transformed into something resembling a military operation. Multiple screens displayed surveillance feeds, tunnel maps, and real-time tracking data. Detective Reeves coordinated with tactical teams while Sarah worked with Emma to extract every possible detail about Tommy's communication with the traffickers. But it was Officer Rivera's sudden exclamation that changed everything. "We found Michael Thompson." The room froze. Sarah's heart skipped a beat as Rivera's tablet displayed a video feed, time-stamped just 10 minutes ago. The grainy security camera footage showed a group of children being led into Prescott Academy's side entrance. Among them was a familiar face, Michael Thompson, alive but different. His movements were mechanical, his expression vacant. "Facial recognition confirms it," Rivera continued, her voice tight. "And there's more. We've identified at least 6 other missing children from the tri-state area. All entered through that same door in the past hour." She zoomed in on the footage. "They're gathering them for something." Emma, who had been quietly drawing nearby, suddenly spoke up. "Tommy said there was going to be a big presentation tonight for important people who want to see their projects." Her crayon moved across the paper, sketching what looked like a conference room. "He said they have to show how special they are." Detective Reeves leaned in, studying Emma's drawing. The detail was remarkable. A large room with tiered seating, computer stations arranged in a semicircle, and something that looked like a projection screen. "Emma, did Tommy tell you what kind of projects they're working on?" The girl's hand trembled slightly. "He said they're making something that can go into other computers, like a key that opens any door." She looked up, tears forming. But he was scared. He said, "If they don't make it work, bad things happen." Sarah's blood ran cold as the implications hit her. They're not just trafficking these children. They're using their gifts to create cyber weapons. She turned to Reeves. "Think about it. Every child they've taken has shown exceptional aptitude in technology or mathematics. They're building a forced labor camp for young hackers." Principal Chen was already pulling up student records. Marcus Chen was a programming prodigy. Michael Thompson won the State Mathematics Olympiad 3 years running, and Tommy... She paused, pulling up his latest assessment. "Tommy recently drew attention for identifying a security flaw in the school district's grading system, which is probably how they found him," Rivera added. "They're not just choosing vulnerable kids. They're selecting specific talents they need." She pointed to her screen, where analysts had compiled a pattern of child disappearances across New England. "Look at the timeline. Each abduction corresponds with a major cyber attack or data breach." The tactical team's commander, Lieutenant Walsh, spread blueprints of Prescott Academy across the desk. "We've got thermal imaging from overhead, multiple heat signatures concentrated in the east wing, basement level, consistent with a server farm or major computing center." He pointed to several entry points. "But if they've got as much security as we suspect, a frontal assault could put the children at risk." Sarah studied the blueprints. 20 years of teachers' instincts combining with what they'd learned. The presentation Emma mentioned. If they're showing off their operation to potential clients, they'll need to maintain a legitimate appearance. She turned to Emma. "Honey, did Tommy say anything about who was coming to see their work?" Emma nodded, reaching for a fresh paper. "He said they're important business people from big companies." Her crayon moved swiftly, drawing men in suits, a corporate logo. "They're coming in fancy cars. Tommy said they have to dress nice and show them everything." Detective Reeves's phone buzzed with a new intelligence report. "We've got movement. Multiple high-end vehicles just left Logan Airport, heading this way. Diplomatic plates, private security details." His expression darkened. "These aren't just any buyers. They're representing foreign interests." "Time check," Rivera announced. 90 minutes until regular school dismissal, but given the VIP arrivals, she gestured to the thermal imaging. "They're already gathering the kids in the presentation area." Lieutenant Walsh outlined the tactical situation. "We've got teams in position around the perimeter. Tunnel access is covered, but if we move in too soon, they could either harm the children, or trigger some kind of data purge. We need a way to get eyes inside before we breach. Sarah's mind raced through possibilities. Then she remembered something from her first year teaching. The service tunnels, not just the steam system, but the old pneumatic message tubes. Every private school built in that era had them. She pointed to the blueprints. They wouldn't show up on modern plans, but they're big enough for a child, Emma finished quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. I could fit. I know what Tommy looks like, where he'll be. I could help. Absolutely not, Sarah and Reeves said simultaneously. But Emma stood her ground, her young face set with determination. They won't hurt kids. That's their whole business. And I can wear a camera. Tommy trusts me. Her voice broke slightly. Please. He's my brother. Before anyone could respond, Rivera's tablet lit up with urgent alerts. We've got problems. Multiple schools in the district just reported unauthorized access to their security systems. They're covering their tracks, probably preparing to move their whole operation. Lieutenant Walsh checked his watch. The buyers will be here in 30 minutes. Once money changes hands, those kids could disappear into diplomatic vehicles with immunity status. We're running out of options. Sarah felt sick at what she was about to say. Emma's right. The pneumatic tubes would be perfect for reconnaissance, small enough to avoid detection, direct access to multiple rooms. She knelt before her student. But honey, you don't have to do this. It's incredibly dangerous. Emma's response was to pick up her drawing of the presentation room. I can remember everything Tommy told me, every detail, and I'm really good at hiding. Tommy and I practice all the time at home. Her small hands were steady now. I want to help save my brother. The next 15 minutes were a blur of careful preparation. While tactical teams maintained their positions, a specialized unit helped Emma into a lightweight vest, equipped with cameras and communication gear. Sarah worked with her to memorize the tube system layout using old architectural drawings found in the school's archives. Remember, Detective Reeves told Emma as they prepared to move, you're our eyes only. The moment you spot Tommy or any of the other children, you signal us. Do not try to make contact. Do not draw attention to yourself. Just find a safe observation point and help us understand what we're dealing with. Emma nodded solemnly as Sarah helped adjust her equipment. Miss Mitchell, she whispered, I'm scared. But I'm more scared of never seeing Tommy again. Sarah hugged her student, fighting back tears. You are the bravest person I've ever met, Emma Parker. And after this is over, I'm recommending you for every school award that exists. The operation was now in motion. Tactical teams moved into final positions while surveillance tracked the approaching buyers. In the command center, Sarah watched multiple screens showing thermal images, security feeds, and Emma's camera view. The tiny girl moved through the ancient tube system like a ghost, guided by Rivera's quiet voice in her ear. Multiple vehicles, approaching the main gate, Walsh reported. Diplomatic convoy, heavy security. We're going to lose our window soon. Emma's camera showed she had reached a viewing port in the main presentation room. Her whispered commentary painted a chilling picture. Dozens of children, including Tommy and Michael, seated at computer stations. Armed guards, disguised as security officers. And at the front of the room, Robert Crane himself, preparing to demonstrate his operation to the arriving buyers. Emma, can you see what's on their screens? Rivera asked softly. Code. Lots of code, and some kind of countdown. Emma's voice trembled slightly. Tommy looks scared. They all do. Sarah studied the footage, her teacher's instincts screaming at what she saw. The children weren't just coding. They were being forced to attack something. Real-time displays showed penetration attempts against multiple systems. This wasn't a demonstration. It was an actual cyber attack, using children as weapons. We need to move, Walsh insisted. Those buyers arrive. This whole thing goes international. We'll never get jurisdiction. But Sarah had spotted something in Emma's feed, a pattern in the way the guards were positioned, in how the children were arranged. Wait, she said. Look at their security. It's all focused on preventing escape or outside interference. They never considered that the threat could come from inside. Reeves finished, understanding dawning. Emma, can you see any kind of manual controls? Emergency systems? The camera panned slowly across the room. There's a big red button near the door, behind the guard. It says, Emergency Power Override. Sarah's mind raced back to her review of the building's systems. The old schools had physical kill switches, completely mechanical, one press, and every electronic system goes dark, Walsh concluded, including whatever's keeping those kids under control. He turned to his tactical teams. Prepare for split-second timing. The moment those systems go down, we breach from all points. Now. They just had to figure out how to reach that button without endangering the children. But as Sarah watched Emma's camera feed, she realized their brave young spy might have already solved that problem. The pneumatic tube exit was directly above the guard station, and Emma Parker, it seemed, had inherited more than just her brother's intelligence. The next few minutes would change everything. Sarah just prayed they had made the right choice in allowing a third grader to become their secret weapon against an international child trafficking ring. Because if anything went wrong, she would never forgive herself for putting one more child in harm's way. The command center fell silent as they watched Emma's camera feed. The 8-year-old had positioned herself perfectly above the guard station, her small body hidden in the shadows of the old pneumatic tube system. Below her, Robert Crane was making final preparations for his buyer's arrival, directing his staff with the confidence of someone who thought they were untouchable. Convoy 2 minutes out, Lieutenant Walsh reported quietly. 3 diplomatic vehicles, 2 security escorts. Thermal imaging shows at least 15 armed personnel. Through Emma's camera, they could see Tommy and the other children working frantically at their stations. Multiple screens showed progress bars, lines of code, and what looked like network penetration diagrams. Sarah's stomach turned as she realized what they were witnessing: a live cyber attack using trafficked children as forced hackers. The code, Rivera murmured, zooming in on one of the screens. They're not just attacking random targets. Look at the system identifiers. She pointed to a series of numbers scrolling past. Those are government databases, defense contractors, research facilities. Detective Reeves was already on his secure line. Get me FBI Cyber Division, now. He turned to the tactical team. We're not just dealing with trafficking. This is espionage. Possibly an act of war. Emma's whispered voice came through their headsets. Ms. Mitchell, Tommy's doing something different from the others. The camera panned to show her brother's screen. While other children worked on what appeared to be coordinated attacks, Tommy was coding something else entirely. Sarah leaned closer to the monitor, her years of watching students work suddenly relevant in ways she'd never imagined. He's not following their attack pattern. Look at his keystrokes. He's building something else behind their monitoring system. Principal Chen, who had been coordinating with other schools to track the broader network, suddenly straightened. The district security alerts, they're changing. Someone's creating a backdoor, but not to attack, to document, to leave evidence. It's Tommy, Sarah realized, pride mixing with fear. He's not just following their orders, he's building a record of everything they're doing. She turned to Reeves. If those buyers see what he's really doing, the detective nodded grimly. Then we're out of time. Walsh, get your teams in position. Rivera, coordinate with FBI Cyber. The moment those systems go dark, I want every piece of data Tommy's collecting secured. Through Emma's camera, they watched as guards began ushering the children into presentation formation. Crane stood at the front of the room, rehearsing his pitch. Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to witness is the future of cyber warfare. Children's minds, unburdened by conventional limitations, guided by our proprietary conditioning methods. Emma's voice trembled slightly. The guard under me is moving. I can almost reach the button, but... Hold position, Walsh commanded. Wait for my signal. He turned to his tactical display. All teams report ready. Snipers have coverage of all exits, tunnel teams in position. Sarah watched as the first of the diplomatic vehicles pulled up to Prescott Academy's front entrance. Men in expensive suits emerged, flanked by security details trying too hard to look like ordinary bodyguards. Among them, she recognized faces from international news coverage, tech company CEOs, defense contractor executives, and at least one foreign intelligence officer traveling under diplomatic cover. Multiple high-value targets confirmed. Walsh, updated. FBI is documenting every face. These folks walked right into a career-ending photo op. But Sarah's attention was on Tommy's screen. His fingers flew across the keyboard with increasing urgency as the buyers entered the building. He was racing against time, trying to complete his hidden documentation before the demonstration began. Crane's voice boomed through the room. Gentlemen, welcome to the future. If you'll direct your attention to the main display. He gestured to a massive screen showing real-time penetration of what appeared to be a major corporate network. That's when everything changed. Tommy's screen flashed red. A guard noticed. "Sir," he called to Crane, "we have unauthorized code execution on Station 7. Crane's smooth demeanor cracked. He strode toward Tommy's station, face darkening. "What do you think you're doing, boy?" "Now!" Sarah commanded, not waiting for Walsh's order. "Emma, hit it!" The tiny figure dropped from the ceiling vent like an avenging angel. Emma Parker, age 8, landed directly on the guard's desk and slammed her hand on the emergency override button before anyone could react. The room plunged into darkness. What followed was controlled chaos. The moment the power died, tactical teams breached from every entrance. Flashbangs erupted as FBI cyber units swept in to secure the computers. Sarah watched through night vision feeds as Walsh's teams executed a textbook takedown of the security forces, many of whom were now trying to claim diplomatic immunity. But it was the children's response that proved most remarkable. The moment the systems went dark, whatever control Crane had over them began to fade. Michael Thompson blinked as if waking from a long sleep. Other children began crying, calling for parents, hugging each other. Tommy Parker, however, was still typing. In the emergency lighting, Sarah could see him working furiously on a laptop that had somehow maintained power. "He's got a battery. Backup," Rivera realized. He knew this was coming. He's been planning for it. "Like his sister," Sarah said proudly, watching as Emma ran to her brother through the chaos of the raid. The Parker siblings hugged fiercely as federal agents secured the scene around them. Crane tried to run. He made it 3 steps before Detective Reeves personally tackled him to the ground. "Robert Crane," the detective growled, cuffing him with perhaps more force than strictly necessary. "You are under arrest for child trafficking, cyberterrorism, espionage." He looked up at the federal agents surrounding them. "I'm sure these gentlemen will have quite a few charges to add to the list." The next hour was a blur of activity. Medical teams evaluated the children while FBI cyber specialists secured every piece of equipment. The would-be buyers found themselves in an awkward position as federal agents photographed and identified each one. Their diplomatic status wouldn't protect them from what Tommy had documented. "Ms. Mitchell," Emma's voice cut through the chaos. She and Tommy ran to Sarah, who hugged them both fiercely. Tommy was pale but alert, his eyes clear of whatever influence Crane had used to control the children. "The files," he said urgently. "I got everything, all their operations, all their contacts. It's encrypted, but I left a key in the school's system. In the grading database, they thought I was trying to hack." He managed a weak smile. "Hiding stuff in plain sight, like Emma taught me." Sarah looked at the Parker siblings with a mixture of pride and amazement. While adults had planned tactical assaults and coordinated federal responses, it was the courage and cleverness of 2 children that had cracked the case wide open. Principal Chen arrived with more news. "We're getting reports from other schools. Once the FBI breached Crane's network, it triggered some kind of failsafe. His entire operation is exposed. Schools across 3 states are identifying compromised staff, finding more victims." "The presentations," Tommy interrupted. "They weren't just showing off our hacking, they were selling us. Each buyer would get their own group of kids, their own facility." His voice broke. "Like franchising, but with children." Detective Reeves, who had returned from processing Crane, knelt before Tommy. "Thanks to you and your sister, that's never going to happen. Your documentation, combined with what we seized here, we're not just shutting down one operation. We're burning down the entire network." Sarah watched as more children were reunited with frantic parents. Michael Thompson's mother sobbed as she held her son. Marcus Chen's parents had arrived from Cambridge, their tears of joy mixing with fierce hugs. Each reunion represented a family made whole again, a future restored. But there was still work to be done. Rivera's tablet showed alerts from schools across the country. "They're all coming forward now," she reported. "Maintenance contracts, security reviews, staff replacements." Crane's organization had infiltrated dozens of districts. "This is going to take months to untangle. And every school will need to change," Sarah added, thinking of all the warning signs they'd missed. New security protocols, better background checks, actual oversight of contractors. She looked at Emma and Tommy. "But most importantly, we need to listen to our children. Really listen." Tommy, still holding his sister's hand, spoke up. "They chose us. because they thought being smart made us vulnerable, that we'd be so excited by their technology, their promises. He squeezed Emma's hand. They didn't count on us being smart enough to fight back. The command center had relocated to a secure floor of Prescott Academy, where federal agents were coordinating the nationwide response. Sarah watched as Emma and Tommy helped investigators understand the full scope of Crane's operation. The siblings finished each other's sentences, piecing together a puzzle that adults had missed for months. "We'll need to brief the press," Walsh said quietly to Reeves. "This is going to be international news by morning. Foreign governments implicated, tech companies compromised, schools exposed. Let them run with it," Reeves replied. "The more exposure, the harder it is for anyone to cover this up." He looked at the Parker siblings. "Besides, I think the world needs to hear this story. Needs to understand that sometimes the biggest heroes come in the smallest packages." Sarah couldn't help but agree. As she watched Emma and Tommy work with the investigators, she realized that everything she thought she knew about protecting children had changed. Sometimes the best defense wasn't better security systems or stricter protocols. Sometimes it was simply creating an environment where children felt safe enough to speak up, brave enough to act, and supported enough to fight back. The sun was setting over Boston, painting Prescott Academy in shades of gold and shadow. In a few hours, this would be the biggest story in the country. But right now, in this moment, Sarah Mitchell watched two of her students change the world, one careful explanation at a time. And she knew that nothing in her classroom would ever be quite the same again. By midnight, Prescott Academy had become the center of a national security operation. The historic building's elegant halls now housed a joint task force of FBI, Homeland Security, and international law enforcement agencies. Sarah sat in what had once been the headmaster's office, watching multiple news feeds as the story broke across global media. "Tech giants implicated in child trafficking ring," screamed one headline. "International cyber espionage network used trafficked children," declared another. But it was the local Boston Globe's headline that caught her eye. "8-year-old hero helps save brother, exposes international crime ring." "We need to keep Emma and Tommy's names out of the media," Detective Reeves insisted, joining her at the monitors. "The scope of what we're uncovering. There are some very powerful people who are going to want this buried." He handed Sarah a tablet displaying Tommy's decoded files. "Take a look at what your student managed to document." The data was staggering. Crane's organization hadn't just infiltrated schools. They had created an entire shadow infrastructure within the American education system. Elite Educational Services was just one node in a network of shell companies, each positioned to identify and extract gifted children for their operation. The conditioning program was sophisticated. Dr. Eleanor Hayes, a child psychiatrist brought in by the FBI, explained as she joined them. She'd spent the last few hours evaluating the rescued children. They used a combination of psychological manipulation and what appears to be experimental neurotechnology. The children were conscious but compliant, their natural abilities enhanced, while their will was suppressed. Sarah felt sick as she read through Tommy's hidden documentation. The special school had been conducting systematic experiments on the children, testing different methods of control while pushing their intellectual capabilities to the limit. They weren't just using them for hacking, she realized. They were trying to create some kind of perfect cyber weapon. "More than that," Rivera added, entering with fresh intelligence reports. "We're finding similar facilities in other countries, always disguised as elite academic programs, always targeting gifted children." She spread photographs across the desk. "Look at these. Private academies in Singapore, Switzerland, the UAE, all following the same pattern." The investigation had expanded far beyond a simple trafficking case. Tommy's hidden documentation revealed connections to international defense contractors, technology companies, and government agencies. The children weren't just being exploited, they were being weaponized. "Tommy's recovering faster than the others," Dr. Hayes noted, reviewing her assessments. Whatever resistance he showed to their conditioning probably helped him maintain more autonomy. "But Emma," the psychiatrist smiled slightly. "Emma might have been their undoing. They never considered that the emotional bond between siblings could be stronger than their control methods." In a secure room down the hall, the Parker siblings were still helping federal agents understand the technical aspects of Crane's operation. Emma hadn't left her brother's side, as if afraid he might disappear again. Tommy worked tirelessly, his knowledge of the system's architecture proving invaluable to the investigation. "Ms. Mitchell?" Emma called as Sarah passed their room. "Can you come see something?" The girl's face was tired but determined. Tommy found something weird in the files about how they chose which kids to take. Sarah joined them at the computer station. Tommy's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up documentation that made her blood run cold. They had criteria, he explained. Not just academic performance or tech skills. They were looking for specific genetic markers. Something about neural plasticity and resistance to their control methods. They wanted kids who were not just smart, Emma added, her young voice serious, but who could be upgraded, like making a computer faster. The implications were horrifying. This wasn't just trafficking or exploitation. It was systematic experimentation on children's minds. Sarah watched as federal agents documented everything, their faces growing grimmer with each revelation. Down in the academy's basement, FBI cyber teams were still processing the sophisticated setup Crane had built. "The hardware is military grade," one technician reported. "Some of it isn't even supposed to exist yet. Quantum computing capabilities, neural interface systems. They were years ahead of anything on the commercial market because they were using the children to develop it," Sarah realized. All those special projects, they weren't just making the kids hack systems, they were having them design new technology. She turned to Reeves. "How many other facilities are we looking at?" The detective consulted his latest briefing. "Confirmed sites in 6 countries, suspected operations in at least 12 more. We're coordinating with Interpol, but some of these locations have serious political protection." He looked troubled. "The buyers we caught here, they're already facing intense diplomatic pressure to release them." "That's not going to happen," Rivera stated firmly. She held up her tablet. "Tommy's documentation doesn't just prove their involvement, it shows they knew exactly what they were buying. International treaties on child trafficking override diplomatic immunity." Sarah watched through the window as more federal agents arrived, each wave bringing new resources and expertise to the expanding investigation. But her attention was drawn back to the Parker siblings. Emma had fallen asleep in her chair while Tommy continued working with investigators, his face showing the strain of his ordeal, but also a fierce determination. "He hasn't stopped," Dr. Hayes observed, joining Sarah at the window. "None of the rescued children have. It's like they're afraid if they stop working, they'll fall back under Crane's control." She consulted her notes. "We're going to need specialized treatment programs. These kids have been through something unprecedented." The night wore on as the full scope of the operation became clear. Sarah helped coordinate as more schools reported suspicious contracts. More parents came forward about missing children, and more evidence emerged of how deep the corruption went. "They had people everywhere," Tommy explained during a brief break. "Teachers, administrators, maintenance staff, all watching for kids they could use. The smart ones, the ones who wouldn't be missed right away." He hugged his knees to his chest. "They told us we were special, that we were helping build the future. But really, they were just using you," Emma finished, having woken up. She took her brother's hand. "But they didn't know about me. They didn't think a little kid could figure it out." Sarah felt a fierce pride mixed with deep sadness. These children had faced horrors no one should experience, yet they'd found the strength not just to survive, but to fight back. Emma's courage and Tommy's resistance had cracked open a conspiracy that spanned continents. Around 3 a.m., a new wave of arrests began. Tommy's files had exposed not just the direct operatives, but the entire support network. School board members who had approved suspicious contracts, technology executives who had laundered the operation's proceeds through legitimate businesses, even several high-ranking education officials who had helped cover up the disappearances. "This goes deeper than we imagined," Reeves admitted, reviewing the latest arrests. "They didn't just infiltrate schools, they compromised the entire system meant to protect children." He looked at Sarah. "We're going to need to rebuild from the ground up. New security protocols, new oversight measures, new ways of listening to our students," Sarah added, thinking of how many warning signs they'd missed. Emma saw what adults couldn't because we weren't paying attention to the right things. Dr. Hayes had begun coordinating with child trauma specialists worldwide. "We're looking at years of recovery for some of these kids. The psychological impact of what they've been through. It's going to take specialized care, innovative therapy approaches." She paused, watching Tommy work. But they're also incredibly resilient. The same gifts that made them targets might help them heal. As dawn approached, Sarah found herself back in the command center, helping process the flood of new information. Schools across the country were conducting emergency audits. Parent groups were organizing support networks. Law enforcement agencies were sharing resources and intelligence in unprecedented ways. But it was the children who continued to amaze her. The rescued kids, once freed from Crane's control, proved invaluable to the investigation. Their enhanced abilities, no longer suppressed by the conditioning, helped authorities understand and dismantle the very systems that had been used to control them. "Ms. Mitchell," Emma tugged at her sleeve. "Tommy wants to show you something." She led Sarah to where her brother had discovered yet another layer of the conspiracy. On his screen was evidence of an even larger plan, one that would have seen Crane's operation expand into every major school district in the country. They were going to take thousands more kids, Tommy explained, his voice shaking. But they had to test the system first, perfect it. That's what we were, the prototype. He looked up at Sarah, his eyes showing wisdom far beyond his years. "We have to make sure this never happens again. Not to anyone." Sarah hugged both siblings, her teacher's heart breaking and swelling simultaneously. "We will," she promised, "starting right now." She turned to the assembled investigators. These children aren't just victims or witnesses. They're the key to making sure no one can ever build a system like this again. The sun rose over Boston, painting the sky in shades of hope and warning. In Prescott Academy, federal agents continued their work, piecing together one of the largest criminal conspiracies in educational history. But in a quiet corner, a teacher and two brave siblings had already begun planning how to rebuild something stronger from the ashes of broken trust, a new way of protecting children that would never again mistake silence for safety. 1 week after the raid on Prescott Academy, Sarah Mitchell found herself testifying before a closed Senate committee. The wood-paneled hearing room was packed with intelligence officials, education experts, and child welfare advocates. But it was the presence of Emma and Tommy Parker in the front row that gave her strength as she described how an 8-year-old girl had exposed what multiple agencies had missed. "The system didn't fail because our security wasn't sophisticated enough," Sarah explained to the assembled senators. "It failed because we created an environment where children didn't feel safe telling adults what was happening." Emma Parker came to me because, in her words, teachers are supposed to help when you're scared. How many other children had no one they trusted enough to tell? The committee room's screens displayed evidence from Tommy's hidden documentation. The sophistication of Crane's operation had stunned even veteran intelligence officials. They hadn't just infiltrated schools, they had weaponized the very infrastructure meant to protect children. The neural conditioning program was unlike anything we've seen, Dr. Hayes testified next, sharing her findings from examining the rescued children. They combined cutting-edge neurotechnology with psychological manipulation, creating a system that could effectively reprogram young minds while preserving their intellectual capabilities. Senator Claire Morrison, herself a former educator, leaned forward. "And you're saying this technology came from legitimate research programs? From companies we trust with our children's data?" "The technology was adapted from educational software already present in many schools," Tommy answered, speaking publicly for the first time. The young boy's testimony had been deemed crucial enough to bypass normal procedures. They used learning, algorithms, behavior tracking systems, even educational games. But they modified them, made them do things they weren't supposed to do. Emma, sitting beside her brother, squeezed his hand as he described how Crane's organization had identified potential targets through seemingly innocent school programs. "They watched everything," she added. "Every test score, every computer class, every online activity. They knew which kids they wanted before they ever came to our schools." The implications were staggering. Major technology companies found themselves facing criminal investigations. Educational software providers discovered their products had been secretly modified. School districts nationwide began emergency audits of every digital system touching students' lives. But the human cost remained immeasurable. In a secure wing of Boston Children's Hospital, Dr. Hayes coordinated an international team of specialists working to help the rescued children recover. The process was complicated by the unprecedented nature of their trauma. Their abilities were artificially enhanced, she explained during a briefing with Sarah and federal investigators. The neural conditioning didn't just control them, it optimized their cognitive functions in ways we're still trying to understand. Some of these children are performing mathematical calculations that should be impossible for their age group. Sarah spent her evenings visiting the recovering children, watching as they struggled to reconcile their enhanced abilities with their restored autonomy. Michael Thompson could now code in 7 programming languages, but had trouble remembering his mother's face. Marcus Chen solved quantum computing problems in his sleep, but couldn't bear to be alone in a room. They made us better, Tommy explained. One night, working with FBI cyber teams to unravel more of Crane's network. But they took away what made us. He looked at Emma, who hadn't returned to regular classes, refusing to leave her brother for long. Emma helped me remember. Every time she talked about home, about normal things, it was like finding pieces of myself again. The investigation expanded globally. Interpol coordinated raids on suspected facilities across 3 continents. The diplomatic buyers caught at Prescott Academy faced intense pressure as their governments tried to distance themselves from the scandal, but Tommy's meticulous documentation left no room for denial. The program was designed to create perfect cyber operatives, Rivera explained during a joint task force briefing. Children whose enhanced abilities could be controlled and directed. They were building an army of prodigies, each one capable of penetrating the most secure systems in the world. The rescued children proved crucial to dismantling the operation's technical infrastructure. Their intimate knowledge of the systems, combined with their enhanced capabilities, helped authorities identify and secure previously unknown facilities. It's like a puzzle, Emma observed, watching her brother work with federal cyber teams. The bad guys thought being smart meant being alone, but they were wrong. Being smart means knowing when to ask for help. Sarah's role evolved as the crisis unfolded. Schools nationwide sought her guidance in rebuilding trust with their students. She worked with child psychologists to develop new protocols for identifying and supporting gifted children who might be targeted by similar operations. The Parker siblings showed us something crucial, she told a conference of educators. The strongest defense against exploitation isn't technology, it's human connection. Emma saved her brother because their bond was stronger than any conditioning program. She reminded him who he was when the system tried to turn him into something else. The Senate committee's recommendations were unprecedented in scope. Every educational technology contract would face new scrutiny. School security systems would require multiple layers of human oversight. Most importantly, substantial resources would be dedicated to creating safe channels for children to report concerns. We're not just rebuilding security, Senator Morrison declared. We're rebuilding trust. These children showed incredible courage in exposing this conspiracy. Now it's our turn to show courage in making sure it never happens again. Late one evening, as Sarah finished reviewing new security protocols for St. Mary's Elementary, she found Emma waiting outside her classroom. The young girl had begun spending time after school, helping to test new reporting systems designed with input from the children who had survived Crane's operation. Ms. Mitchell, Emma asked, her voice serious. Do you think the other kids will ever feel safe at school again? Sarah considered the question carefully. I think they'll feel safer knowing that students like you and Tommy helped create better ways to protect them. That's what real heroes do. They don't just solve problems, they help make sure those problems can't hurt anyone else. The aftermath of the Prescott Academy raid continued to ripple through society. Education systems worldwide underwent radical transformation. Technology companies face new regulations on how they could interact with schools. Intelligence agencies reformed their oversight of educational institutions, but the most profound changes happened at the personal level. Tommy and the other rescued children, supported by specialized therapy and unwavering family support, began the long journey of reclaiming their identities. Their enhanced abilities remained, but now they could choose how to use them. I want to help make schools safer, Tommy announced during a recovery session. Not just with better computers or security systems, but by helping kids like me know they're not alone. That being different doesn't mean being vulnerable. Emma, ever present at her brother's side, had already begun working with child advocacy groups. Her simple courage in coming forward had inspired a movement. Schools reported a surge in students speaking up about concerns, trusted adults stepping forward to help. communities coming together to protect their children. As spring turned to summer, Sarah watched her students adapt to the new normal. Security measures were stronger, yes, but more importantly, the culture had changed. Children knew they would be heard. Teachers knew what signs to watch for. Parents understood that gifted children needed protection as much as encouragement. The Parker siblings became reluctant symbols of this transformation, their story carefully protected, but their impact widely felt. They showed that the greatest defense against exploitation was not isolation or fear, but connection and trust. You know what the bad guys really got wrong? Emma asked one day, helping Sarah set up her classroom's new student safety system. They thought being smart meant you had to be alone, but being smart actually means knowing how to help each other, like a big puzzle where everyone has a piece. Sarah hugged her student, marveling at the wisdom in those young eyes. The tragedy of Prescott Academy had exposed horrible truths about how vulnerable gifted children could be, but it had also revealed something powerful, that the strength to fight back often came not from sophisticated security systems or advanced technology, but from the simple courage of a child who refused to let her brother disappear. The International Task Force headquartered at FBI's Boston field office had a wall they called the Network. 6 months after the Prescott Academy raid, this digital display showed the sprawling web of Crane's operation across 5 continents. Each day, more red lights turned green as facilities were shut down, conspirators arrested, and children rescued. Singapore raid successful, Agent Rivera announced, updating the map. 34 children recovered, facility secured. Local authorities found something interesting. Experimental quantum computing hardware, different from what we saw at Prescott. Sarah studied the new data as it appeared. She'd been appointed special advisor to the task force, her experience with the Parker siblings proving invaluable in understanding how the operation had targeted and controlled gifted children. They were testing different methods at each facility, she realized, using different groups of children for different aspects of their research. Tommy, who now worked with the task force 3 days a week as part of his therapy, looked up from his computer station. The Singapore code is similar to what they had us working on, but more advanced. They were building something bigger than just hacking tools. His fingers flew across the keyboard, correlating data from multiple facilities. Look at this pattern. The screens filled with composite analysis. Each facility had specialized in different areas. Quantum computing in Singapore, artificial intelligence in Switzerland, neural interface systems in Dubai. The children at each location had been carefully selected for specific talents and abilities. It wasn't just about creating cyber weapons, Dr. Hayes observed, reviewing Tommy's analysis. They were trying to develop entirely new forms of human-computer interaction, using children's natural neural plasticity to bridge the gap between human consciousness and artificial intelligence. Emma, who had become a regular presence at task force briefings, spoke up from her homework corner. They wanted to make us part computer, she said simply. That's why they picked kids who were good with technology. We could understand both languages, human and machine. The implications sent shockwaves through the intelligence community. Major tech companies found themselves facing congressional investigations into their research programs. Several prominent AI developers were discovered to have indirect connections to Crane's network. The neural conditioning technology originated in legitimate research, Tommy explained during a closed-door briefing with intelligence officials. They took educational software designed to help kids learn and twisted it, made it do things it wasn't supposed to do. He demonstrated on a secure system, showing how seemingly innocent learning programs had been modified into sophisticated control mechanisms. Sarah watched her former student with a mixture of pride and concern. Tommy's enhanced abilities remained, but through intensive therapy with Dr. Hayes, he'd learned to use them on his own terms. The same brilliant mind that Crane had tried to weaponize now worked to prevent other children from suffering the same fate. We're seeing a pattern in school infiltration worldwide, Rivera reported, bringing up new data. They didn't just look for gifted children, they looked for specific combinations of traits. High IQ, yes, but also certain personality profiles, family situations, even genetic markers. The task force had uncovered a sophisticated selection algorithm hidden in popular educational software. It ran silently in the background, analyzing student data and flagging potential targets for the operation. Schools worldwide were now racing to audit their systems, horrified to discover how their own technology had been turned against their students. The program was brilliant in its simplicity, Tommy explained, walking the team through the code. It looked for kids who were not just smart, but isolated, the ones who felt different, who didn't quite fit in. Then it helped create situations where those kids would be even more isolated, more vulnerable. Emma, who had been drawing in her notebook, held up a picture. It showed a complex web of connections, drawn with a child's hand, but displaying remarkable insight. Like a spider web, she said. They made the smart kids feel alone, then offered them a special place where being different was good. But it was a trap. The recovery program for rescued children had evolved based on these insights. Dr. Hayes and her team developed protocols that emphasized social connection alongside therapeutic support. The enhanced abilities remained, but now they were balanced with emotional healing and genuine human relationships, firsthand in her work with the recovered students. Michael Thompson could crack military-grade encryption, but had panic attacks in crowded rooms. Marcus Chen wrote AI algorithms in his sleep, but couldn't make eye contact with new people. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Emma Parker, watching her brother struggle with recovery, had started a simple support group. She called it the Puzzle Club, a place where gifted kids could be themselves while helping each other heal. Everyone has a piece of the puzzle, she explained to Sarah one afternoon. Some kids are good at math, some at computers, some at understanding feelings, but we're all part of the same picture. The bad guys tried to make us think being special meant being alone. They were wrong. The Puzzle Club concept spread rapidly. Schools across the country adopted the model, creating safe spaces where gifted children could connect while maintaining appropriate security protocols. The Parker siblings' experience had shown that the best defense against exploitation was genuine human connection. We're seeing remarkable progress, Dr. Hayes reported 6 months into the program. The children who participate in Puzzle Club activities show significantly faster emotional recovery while maintaining their enhanced cognitive abilities. They're learning to be both gifted and human. The international investigation continued to expand. Each raided facility provided new evidence, new connections to unravel. The task force worked tirelessly, but they never lost sight of the human cost at the center of it all. Terminal 4 is active, Tommy announced one morning, his screens filling with incoming data. He'd named the secure system he'd designed to track Crane's remaining network. We've got movement in Eastern Europe, similar pattern to Prescott Academy, educational consulting firm, technology upgrades, staff replacements. The task force mobilized immediately, coordinating with international partners. But this time, they had something Crane's organization never expected. A network of recovered children helping to protect others from the fate they'd escaped. They thought making us smarter would make us easier to control, Tommy explained to a new group of task force analysts. But they didn't understand. Real intelligence isn't just about processing power. It's about connection, about using your gifts to help others. Sarah watched as her former student walked the team through complex security protocols he'd designed. Tommy's enhanced abilities now served a new purpose, protecting other gifted children from exploitation. His sister Emma, ever present, added crucial insights about the human elements they might have missed. The software looks for lonely kids, she explained, pointing to patterns in the data. But now we can help schools look for them too, not to hurt them, but to help them find their puzzle pieces, their friends, their safe places, their trusted grown-ups. As summer approached, the task force prepared for a coordinated operation across multiple countries. The evidence Tommy had gathered pointed to a major attempt by Crane's remaining associates to rebuild their network. But this time, the authorities were ready. We're not just dismantling their operation, Rivera told the planning session. We're building something better in its place. A system that protects gifted children by connecting them, not isolating them. By celebrating their differences while ensuring their safety. Sarah looked around the room at the incredible team that had come together. Federal agents, child psychologists, education experts, and at the heart of it all, 2 remarkable siblings who had turned their trauma into a force for change. Emma had fallen asleep at her usual spot near Tommy's workstation. Her latest puzzle, club drawings scattered around her. Her brother worked on, his enhanced mind racing through possibilities, but now he did so with purpose and peace. They were no longer victims or even just survivors. They were pioneers, showing the world that The greatest defense against those who would exploit gifted children was to help those children find their strength in each other. The operations center hummed with tension as feeds from 6 countries displayed simultaneously on the wall of screens. Task force teams across 3 continents waited for the signal to begin the largest coordinated raid in international law enforcement history. Sarah watched Tommy Parker work at his specialized station, his enhanced mind processing data streams that would overwhelm most supercomputers. Multiple targets confirmed, he announced, his fingers flying across 3 keyboards simultaneously. Eastern European network is active, picking up signature behaviors consistent with student selection protocols. He paused, his expression darkening. They're evolving the algorithm, learning from their mistakes at Prescott. Emma, who had insisted on being present for this operation, looked up from her latest puzzle club drawings. They're looking for different kids now, she observed, studying her brother's screens. Not just the smart ones who feel alone. They want the ones who are angry too. Dr. Hayes, reviewing real-time psychological profiles, nodded grimly. They're adapting their selection criteria, looking for gifted children who might be more susceptible to manipulation through negative emotions rather than isolation. She turned to Sarah. The implications for school security are significant. The task force had spent months preparing for this moment. Intelligence from recovered facilities had revealed that Crane's remaining associates were attempting to rebuild their operation with a new approach. Instead of hiding in prestigious private schools, they were targeting struggling public school districts, offering desperately needed technology upgrades and support services. Confirmation from Warsaw, Agent Rivera reported, her tablet displaying live surveillance feeds. Subject identified as Marcus Van, former NATO cybersecurity consultant. He's using educational reform initiatives as cover for installing modified learning software. She brought up personnel files. Local staff replacements already underway. Sarah studied the pattern, seeing horrible similarities to how Prescott Academy had been infiltrated. But this time, they weren't just observing. Tommy's enhanced abilities, combined with Emma's intuitive understanding of how predators targeted children, had helped them develop an unprecedented counter-operation. Terminal 4 shows quantum signature spikes in 3 locations, Tommy announced, referring to the detection system he'd designed. They're testing new neural interface protocols, more sophisticated than what they used on us. His hands trembled slightly, memories threatening to overwhelm him. Emma was at his side instantly, her small hand on his shoulder. Remember the puzzle. Pieces, Tommy. You're not alone anymore. The simple gesture, born of thousands of similar moments during his recovery, helped center him. The siblings had learned that their strongest defense against the trauma of their experience was their connection to each other. Multiple facilities activating simultaneously, Rivera updated, the map lighting up with new alerts. Poland, Romania, Ukraine, they're creating a networked system, each location specializing in different aspects of the program. The intelligence was compelling. While Prescott Academy had focused on cyber warfare capabilities, these new facilities were pushing the boundaries of human-computer integration. They weren't just trying to control gifted children, they were attempting to fundamentally alter how young minds interfaced with technology. The software installations are complete in Warsaw, Tommy reported, his enhanced perception catching patterns others might miss. They're starting student evaluations tomorrow. First targets already identified through their screening system. He pulled up school records, showing children flagged by the algorithm. We need to move now. Sarah felt a chill as she reviewed the potential victims. Each child had been selected with terrifying precision. Gifted students struggling with anger, isolation, or family difficulties. The perfect candidates for manipulation and exploitation. All teams in position, Detective Reeves confirmed, now coordinating with Interpol. Local authorities standing by, tactical units ready for simultaneous breach at all locations. He looked to Tommy, waiting for your signal, son. The moment was laden with significance. The same enhanced abilities that Crane's organization had tried to weaponize were now being used to bring them down. Tommy's fingers moved across his keyboards, initiating the counter protocols he'd designed. Terminal 4 activated, he announced. Quantum interference patterns engaging. Their systems are going dark. Now. Across Eastern Europe, carefully hidden facilities suddenly lost control of their sophisticated technology. The modified learning software, designed to identify and manipulate vulnerable children, turned against its creators. Tommy's code, born from his understanding of how the system had controlled him, systematically dismantled their digital infrastructure. Multiple suspects attempting to flee Warsaw facility, Rivera reported, watching live feeds. Local tactical teams moving to intercept. Similar patterns at other locations. Emma's voice cut through the tactical chatter. Tommy, look at the student files. Something's wrong with the dates. She pointed to discrepancies in the data. These kids were flagged before the new software was installed. They had another way to find them. The revelation sparked urgent analysis. Tommy dove deeper into the network, his enhanced capabilities peeling back layers of deception. What they found was staggering. An entire shadow infrastructure built into existing educational databases worldwide. It's not just Eastern Europe, he realized, horror dawning. They built backdoors into student information systems globally. Years ago, everything else, the software, the facilities, the staff replacements, it's all just window dressing. They've been watching every school, every student. For how long? Sarah asked, though she feared she knew the answer. Since before. Prescott, Emma answered, her young face serious. They've been building their puzzle for years, making lists of kids they might want later. The implications were horrifying. This wasn't just about dismantling current operations. They needed to protect millions of children whose information had been secretly gathered and analyzed. The task force's mission had just expanded exponentially. New priority targets identified. Rivera announced, tactical teams adjusting in real time. We need to secure their data centers, all of them. Before they can purge the evidence, the next hours were a blur of coordinated action across multiple continents. As tactical teams breached facilities and arrested suspects, cyber units raced to secure decades of compromised student data. The operation had transformed from a raid into a massive rescue mission, not just of currently targeted children, but of every student whose information had been secretly collected and analyzed. Through it all, the Parker siblings remained at the heart of the operation. Tommy's enhanced abilities proved crucial in navigating the complex web of compromised systems, while Emma's intuitive understanding of how predators thought helped identify hidden patterns and connections. They built it like a puzzle, she explained to the task force analysts, using her drawings to illustrate, each piece looking normal by itself, but when you put them together, she connected several seemingly innocent educational programs, revealing how they secretly shared and analyzed student data. Dr. Hayes, watching the siblings' work, saw something remarkable. This is why they couldn't control Tommy completely, she realized. The emotional connection with his sister, it gave him an anchor their technology couldn't override. They never understood that human connection could be stronger than their conditioning. As dawn broke over Boston, the full scope of their victory became clear. Dozens of arrests across multiple countries, hundreds of potential victims identified and protected, and most importantly, the exposure of a vast system designed to identify and exploit gifted children worldwide. But we're not finished, Tommy said quietly, still working at his station. Finding the kids they flagged is just the beginning. We need to help them stay safe, help them understand why they were chosen. Emma nodded, already sketching new ideas for her puzzle club program. We need to make it bigger, she declared. Not just for kids who got hurt, but for all the special kids. So they know being different doesn't mean being alone. Sarah watched her former students with pride and determination. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were leaders in a transformation of how society protected its most vulnerable gifted children. The tragedy of Prescott Academy had exposed a horrible truth, but it had also revealed an even more powerful reality, that the strongest defense against exploitation was not isolation or control, but connection and understanding. As the task force began the massive job of securing compromised systems and protecting flagged students, Sarah knew this was just the beginning. The Parker siblings had shown them that the real work wasn't just dismantling the old system, it was building something better in its place. 1 year after the international raids, Sarah Mitchell stood before the United Nations Educational Summit in Geneva. The Grand Assembly Hall was packed with education ministers, child welfare experts, and technology leaders from around the world. But her eyes were drawn to the two young figures sitting in the front row, Emma and Tommy Parker, now globally recognized as the catalysts for the most significant transformation in educational security history. The Prescott Academy incident taught us many things, Sarah began, her voice carrying years of hard-won wisdom. But perhaps the most important lesson came from an 8-year-old girl who refused to let her brother disappear. Emma Parker showed us that our most sophisticated security systems mean nothing if we don't create an environment where children feel safe speaking up. The screens behind her displayed statistics that would have been unimaginable a year ago. Over 50,000 gifted children identified as potential targets in Crane's global database. Hundreds of compromised school systems discovered and secured. An entire shadow infrastructure of exploitation exposed and dismantled. But numbers don't tell the real story, Sarah continued. The real story is about transformation, not just of our security systems, but of how we approach gifted education entirely. She gestured to where Tommy sat, now 13 and helping coordinate a worldwide network of support programs for gifted children. Our students showed us that the greatest defense against exploitation isn't isolation or control, it's connection. The summit represented the culmination of a year's intense work. Dr. Hayes, now heading the International Center for Gifted Child Protection, presented findings from their recovery program. The enhanced abilities remain, she explained, showing brain scans from recovered children. But we've discovered something remarkable. When these capabilities are supported by emotional connection and genuine human relationships, they actually expand beyond what Crane's conditioning could force. Tommy's own journey illustrated this perfectly. His enhanced cognitive abilities, no longer suppressed by conditioning, had evolved into something extraordinary. He'd developed new ways of understanding computer systems, creating protection protocols that combined technological sophistication with deep emotional intelligence. The Terminal Force system has identified and prevented 12 attempted infiltrations of school systems this year alone, Agent Rivera reported. But more importantly, it's helped us understand how to create truly safe environments for gifted children. She brought up data showing the global implementation of Tommy's security protocols, now standard in schools worldwide. Emma's contribution had been equally transformative. Her puzzle club concept had evolved into an international program with chapters in schools across 6 continents. It's not just about being smart, she explained to the assembly, her young voice clear and confident. It's about helping each other feel safe being different. The impact was measurable. Schools implementing the Puzzle Club program showed significant increases in student reporting of suspicious behavior. Gifted children, often targets for exploitation, found communities where their unique abilities were celebrated rather than isolated. What began as a tragedy has become a revolution in how we protect and nurture gifted children, Dr. Hayes noted. The Parker siblings showed us that enhanced abilities don't have to come at the cost of emotional development. In fact, the strongest intellectual growth occurs when supported by genuine human connection. The summit screens displayed live feeds from Puzzle Club meetings worldwide. In Tokyo, young mathematics prodigies collaborated on complex problems while learning to express their emotions. In Rio de Janeiro, gifted programmers worked together on security projects, supporting each other through trauma and recovery. In Sochi, London, former victims of exploitation helped new members understand that being special didn't mean being alone. But our work isn't finished, Tommy addressed the assembly, his voice carrying the weight of experience. We've secured the systems. Yes, we've dismantled the exploitation networks, but we need to do more than just protect. We need to empower. He brought up designs for a new kind of educational program, one that combined enhanced learning opportunities with strong emotional support and security. Sarah watched with pride as her former student outlined his vision. The tragedy of Prescott Academy had revealed horrible vulnerabilities in how society handled gifted children. But it had also sparked a transformation in how these same children could be supported and protected. The Puzzle Club isn't just about making friends, Emma explained, joining her brother at the podium. It's about understanding that everyone has something special to offer. The bad guys try to use our gifts to hurt people. We're using them to help instead. The evidence was compelling. Schools implementing the new protocols showed remarkable results. Gifted children thrived not just academically, but emotionally. The enhanced abilities that Crane's organization had tried to weaponize were being channeled into positive developments in technology, science, and human understanding. We're seeing unprecedented cooperation between education and security sectors, Rivera reported. The Parker Protocol, as it's now known, requires schools to balance enhanced learning opportunities with strong emotional support and sophisticated security measures. She brought up global implementation maps. Over 2,000 schools have already adopted the full program. Another 5,000 are in the process. Dr. Hayes shared long-term recovery data from the rescued children. The integration of enhanced capabilities with healthy emotional development has produced remarkable results. These children aren't just surviving, they're revolutionizing how we understand human potential. The assembly watched footage from recent Puzzle Club achievements. A team of recovered children had developed new cybersecurity systems that combined technical brilliance with emotional intelligence. Others were advancing fields from quantum computing to psychological support, their enhanced abilities guided by genuine human connection. But perhaps the most significant change, Sarah concluded, is in how we view gifted children themselves. No longer as resources to be managed or abilities to be controlled, but as whole human beings who need both challenge and connection to truly thrive. As the summit concluded, Sarah found herself in the garden with the Parker siblings. Emma, now 9, was teaching other children her age about the importance of speaking up when something felt wrong. Tommy worked with international technology teams, his enhanced mind helping design systems to protect other gifted children from exploitation. Ms. Mitchell, Emma asked, taking a break from her impromptu lesson. Do you think the bad guys will try again? Find new ways to hurt special kids? Sarah considered the question carefully. They might try, she admitted. But thanks to you and Tommy, we're better prepared. You showed us that the strongest defense isn't just good security, it's creating communities where children feel safe being exactly who they are. Tommy nodded, looking up from his tablet. The systems we're building now, they're not just about keeping bad guys out. They're about letting good things in, helping gifted kids find each other, support each other, protect each other. The sun set over Geneva as the summit's participants departed, carrying with them new protocols and programs to implement worldwide. But Sarah knew the real change wasn't in the systems or software. It was in the fundamental shift in how society viewed and supported its most gifted children. In the year since Prescott Academy, they'd discovered something profound, that the very qualities that made gifted children vulnerable to exploitation, their intelligence, sensitivity, and uniqueness, could become their greatest strengths when supported by genuine human connection. Emma's Puzzle Club had grown beyond anyone's expectations, creating safe spaces where gifted children could be both brilliant and vulnerable. Tommy's security systems protected schools while fostering the kind of environment where students felt safe speaking up. And Sarah, watching her former students change the world, knew that this was just the beginning. As darkness fell, Emma gathered her latest Puzzle Club drawings, complex diagrams showing how different kinds of special abilities could work together. Tommy's screens displayed the global network of protected schools, each one a point of light in the growing darkness. And Sarah Mitchell, who had once been just a third-grade teacher, watched hope spread across the world, one connection at a time. You know what the bad guys really got wrong? Emma asked, putting the final piece in her latest puzzle. They thought being special meant being separate, but really, being special means having a bigger puzzle to solve. And the best way to solve big puzzles is to solve them together, Tommy finished, smiling at his sister. Sarah hugged them both, knowing that from the darkness of Prescott Academy had emerged something powerful and transformative. A new way of protecting and nurturing gifted children that would echo through generations to come. The end.